My name is Ibrahim Mahama, and I'm from Ghana. Um, the objects that I contributed to the material library were basically an old archival map that was made in Gold Coast pre-independence Ghana. That also kind of made these specific maps of these different geographical locations. I gave you a very specific one of a town called Takwa, which is like a mining town. So you have a lot of gold, bauxite, and other things there. And it's been, it was one of the areas where the railway network was built by the British to go into. So there are a lot of extraction of resources from there. So I thought it was really important. The other materials, one which is a needle, which we normally use in sewing of the jute sacks in the studio. And then the third one, which is these metal tags, which basically have this embossment in them, QC with a batch number, so like quality control. They're normally metal tags that are placed onto sacks when there are commodities that have been put on into them, which are about to be transported internationally. Yes. The material of my work, it's one which is very physical, one which is very visual, but it's one that is also very political, because the objects, I tend to be very much interested in a lot of objects, both objects that have this kind of archival quality and ones that also are just ordinary, that is used every day, and the jute sack is one of them. But there is this sense of memory, and also the idea of the archive is more extended within it, because when you look at it, you don't look at it as something only that exists within, let's say, a certain historical order, but you can also project it beyond what it is visually. Because I'm interested in the potential beyond the chaos, because I mostly I use the crisis as a medium to work with, and through that I work with specific objects that have a certain historical context in relation to architecture and also specific geographical locations. But then again, it's more or less about the spaces and the memories that are contained within these objects and how it behaves differently or recontextualized when you transfer it from one space to the other. So just as it occupies food, it can also occupy the body, it can occupy a building, and it can also transfer from one space to the other. So it deals more with the politics of the objects, both interior and the exterior of it. The objects that I contributed they are very physical to the work that I made for the exhibition, because the metal tags are originally on the jute sacks. So it's when you look very closely at the work, you realize that there are very specific details within it which composes many of this material. The needles are the same needles that I use in sewing the work, and then this map is actually also from areas and this particular site where a lot of mineral resources were extracted from, and a lot of the trains that were used in this were produced here in Kassel at the Henschel Hallen. Yeah. So yeah, and of course some of them are still being in use, and most of them have been scrapped over time. So you realize that on the work there are these textures and other things, particularly on this side of the museum. All those things are coming from the original trains, the interior leather, the back side where the leather met the metal of the train. But because it's been in use and abandoned for a long time and it's been beaten by rain, the aesthetics almost appears like the sack when it's been used for over a decade or more. So I was more or less interested in trying to put the different aesthetics of all the various objects and how also they relate to these things, because the maps are very important in terms of the age of them and also the different markings in them. And some of them you can physically find them within the text and other things that are on the jute sacks. So yeah, it's this kind of relationship between things that are very seem a bit more conceptual and things that also seem a lot more pragmatic and social in terms of their place in the real world.